Can this girl carry the spirit of a dead teenager? How can they remember their past lives?
But I do believe that reincarnation should be taken seriously.
There are many strange stories of people claiming to remember earlier lives that at first glance defy explanation. The University of Charlottesville in Virginia. Here in the Personality Studies Division, modern science is coming head-to-head with the mystical beliefs of reincarnation. The unit tries to establish hard evidence of the truths behind the stories such as Devi's. They use the information to assess the potential applications in understanding the human personality. Its founder is psychologist Professor Ian Stevenson. For over 40 years he has travelled the world tracking down those children who claim to be able to recall a past life. Over this long period, he believes that a significant pattern has emerged in many countries.
Individually, the cases of these little children seemed weak, but when you looked at them as a whole, they showed me certain uniformities. Very young age of the children, 2 to 5, and then the tendency for the children to forget when they were 7 or 8.
What began as a personal interest developed into a fully funded research project, which is still struggling to find the truth. There are over 2,000 cases of alleged rebirth from around the world in Stevenson's filing system, but incontrovertible proof is hard to pin down.
Well, my conclusion so far is that for the strongest cases, reincarnation is the best, but not the only explanation. We don't have any perfect case. They all have some flaw. And so I've never claimed we have anything like a proof of reincarnation. But I do believe that reincarnation should be taken seriously as a possible explanation.
Stevenson cross-checks all available details of the children's stories, but he also looks for physical signs, traces of the violent deaths from which many of the children claim to have died.
A small number of the birthmarks are very similar in appearance to birthmarks that nearly everybody has, what we call melanocytic nevi. But most of the birthmarks that I and my colleagues have described are much more substantial.
Stevenson has collected over 600 of these cases. A little girl from Turkey. She claims to remember that her husband killed her in her former life by cutting her head off. Across her throat, she has a faint red birthmark. There's the little boy from Sri Lanka. He says he was killed by a shot in the head, and this is the wound. And a boy from India who died in a car crash that crushed his leg.
In many cases, we've been able to verify the existence of the wounds with post-mortem reports, which are very precious. And we need more of that.
In order to gather more evidence and follow up leads, Stevenson has installed a global network of researchers on standby around the world. In 2003, in southern Turkey, a curious case came to light. German psychologist Dr. Jürgen Keil went to investigate.
Under circumstances that I would call good, The child was able to give me information that, in my opinion, could not possibly have come from her current life. I would therefore call it a case that is above average.
In 1998, a young Turkish girl, Atra Kapı, died of brain injuries in a car crash in her home of Antakya. "28 days later, in another Turkish village not far away, Demet Yilderi was born.
This child had a birthmark that is now faded, and we certainly can't say that it was definitely connected to the accident, but it is the same place where Atra was fatally injured.
At the family home, Kyle meets Demet and her grandmother Kezben Yilderi. She is absolutely convinced by her grandchild's story.
Demet said from the beginning that she had two mothers, and she even knew the name of her mother from her past life, Lemia. "Why do you have two mothers?" I asked her, but she insisted on it, and the first time she even said her name, Lemia. I knew a Lemia, she was a tailor, and I had my clothes made by her. I had not mentioned any of this to Demet, and all of a sudden she asked, "Grandma, what is sewing?" I was astounded, by Allah, and asked myself how on earth she would have known about that.
Such conviction from a family makes unravelling the truth complicated. At London University, psychologist Chris French works on the paranormal. He recognises the difficulty of getting objective evidence in these situations.
If we look at some of the specific cases of children who've apparently remembered past lives, then I think there is some evidence to suggest that in some of those cases, the role has been taken on by the child in response to unintentional cueing from the parents and maybe even from some researchers.
So is the child playing the part, or are her memories real? Through a translator, Kyle questions her about relatives from her previous life.
Can she remember any other name?
Başka isim hatırlıyor musun? Okan, Hakan, Lamia. Başka hiç isim hatırlıyor musun? Ha?
Sadece Ayfer.
Only Ayfer.
Who was Ayfer?
Kimdi Ayfer? Kimdi Ayfer?
Ayfer benim kardeşim.
Ayfer was my sister.
Demet's mother also believes.
Orada şöyle bir şey oldu.
We were in a group of about 20 people traveling in a bus to the seaside. My husband was driving. My brother Mehmet was with us as well. Demet was sitting in between us. 10 kilometers before Çevlik, she suddenly got very upset. She was shaking and crying. My brother put his arm around her and asked what on earth was going on. Her voice was trembling and she was terrified. She said, "This is where we had the accident."
Her mother supports the little girl, and Demet is sticking to her story.
Ben Çevlik'te öldüm.
Sen de nereden biliyorsun Çevlik'te öldüğünü? Ha? Kim dedi sana Çevlik'te öldü? She said she died in Çevlik. So I asked her, who told you that you died in Çevlik? She said, I know myself.
The family belong to the Alawite sect of Islam, a group that deviates from the religion in one major way. They believe in reincarnation. For the local imam, Demet's rebirth is an act of God.
This is a God-given talent, a God-given gift. It mainly happens to people who die in accidents. They drown or they get shot. These are the people who talk to us the most.
But it seems inevitable that anyone brought up in this belief system would be influenced by the views expressed around her. And for the others, a child like Demet is a reaffirmation of their faith. Chris French believes the setting and background are all important in these cases.
What happens is this provides a kind of context in which the development of false memories, so the children actually come to believe that they really did have these past lives, is likely to happen.
Yet Demet claims to remember all the details of the fatal crash. Kyle visits Atra Kapı, sister of the dead girl, who was also in the accident, and who also has memories.
The person who died.
I crawled out of the car and could hear that they had found her, quite far away from the place where the accident happened, near a canal. Her mobile phone and her cigarettes were still lying there. She was bleeding badly from her head, and you could see the inside of her skull.
And then I bumped into a stone.
My vein popped out. Something had burst. Then I got smaller and smaller.
Is this 4-year-old really remembering her own death? Finally, Atra Kapı meets the little girl who claims to be her sister reborn. The girls stare at each other. But Demet shows little interest in her beloved sister from earlier times. She plays like a normal 4-year-old, but with no sign of recognition. But Atra also believes in reincarnation, and sees her dead sister's soul in the little girl's eyes. The results of Kyle's work in Turkey are sent back to the university department in Charlottesville. But like so many of his cases, the conclusions are very unclear.